Hello wonderful person, this is Anton, and just by looking at this, can you actually smell what's going on here? Can you smell the rain? This is probably one of the most familiar smells to human beings, and in today's video what I wanted to talk about is the so-called Petrichor, the smell of rain, because there's a really important science behind it, and we may have actually discovered what causes it as well. Let's talk about it, and welcome to What the Math. Now it's very interesting how most people around the world would actually agree that the smell of rain is pleasing to us. And on top of that, it's probably one of the most familiar smells to human beings around the planet. But what most people don't realize is that when it comes to smelling rain, the so-called Petrichor, as the actual smell is known, that you can also often smell in the forest, or if you start digging around, is actually the smell humans can sense extremely well. As a matter of fact, we can smell it better than dogs can smell most of the other things. Interestingly, we even beat sharks in their ability to smell blood in the water when it comes to this particular molecule. And it is a molecule. It's actually a compound known as geosmin, which actually stands for earth smell, geo being earth and osme being smell. And although the mystery behind why we can smell it so well is still kind of not really resolved, as a matter of fact, today most scientists believe that it probably has something to do with evolutionary advantage of being able to smell the rain and smelling, I guess, the water being produced somewhere. We're not sure. We actually have no idea why we can smell it so well. But we have finally solved one mystery about it. We have solved its origins and how it's being distributed around the planet. And it has something to do with these little guys. So what exactly is geosmin? Well, it's actually a chemical compound made entirely by this bacterium right here, known as Streptomyces. Streptomyces are some of the most important bacteria we've discovered because it allows us to produce a lot of different antibiotics that have been actually very actively used in medicine. And although with about 500 different species, not all of them are able to produce antibiotics, pretty much all of them without exception are able to produce geosmin, and essentially can produce this unusual smell. But the main question here is why? Why do they produce this smell? And obviously, why can we smell it? So the second question we can't really answer right now. For some reason, humans are able to smell it exceptionally well. And on top of that, it also appeals to us. It does seem to be a really good smell that we all like, or most of us like. Although interestingly, if the geosmin molecule is found in food or usually in drink, like for example wine, which does sometimes happen when, for example, wine is contaminated, it actually kind of makes it taste really gross, almost muddy or dirty in the way that it actually tastes. And so there are definitely mysteries about this particular molecule that we still can't answer. But what have we answered? Well, the origin. So now we understand why it's basically everywhere around the world, why things smell like rain pretty much the same everywhere around the planet, and why this smell is basically familiar to everyone. The real reason for this is essentially 400 or over 400 million years of evolution between two different organisms. The previously mentioned Streptomyces and its partner in crime, the insect known as springtail that you see right here, that also comes in different shapes and sizes, but without exception seems to love the smell of geosmin as well, and at the same time loves eating Streptomyces bacteria. And interestingly, even though Streptomyces for the most part is actually sort of poisonous to many different animals and will usually even kill certain animals, these little guys seem to be immune to all of the poisons inside the bacteria and are actively attracted to the smell and love eating them. And when springtails absorb Streptomyces bacteria, they often actually either get completely smudged in different spores from the bacteria or even end up producing the bacterial spores in their poop. And obviously this is exactly what bacteria wants to basically propagate itself around the planet. So in other words, geosmin is literally kind of like the dinner announcement for these insects to go there, to find the bacteria, to eat them, and to basically accidentally spread their spores around the planet, which is what they've been doing for over 400 million years, and which is why the smell is pretty much prevalent everywhere around the planet. Because obviously these bacteria are everywhere in the ground, everywhere around us, and seem to release the smell when things get a little bit more wet. Or essentially when the rain comes out and forces these bacteria to produce all of these molecules. Now we obviously don't really know why this happens just yet, but the scientists behind the paper you can find in the description below did establish a really interesting relationship that these bugs have to this bacteria. And their tests to show this relationship were actually really clever, including things like labyrinths that the insects had to navigate to find the food source, and even using a technique known as electroantenography, which basically attaches these electrodes to the bug's antenna and tries to measure their reaction to certain molecules. And they've discovered that the insects also love the smell just as much as we do, and at the same time they were able to confirm that the typical springtail, after encountering the bacteria, would be completely covered in spores, usually from eating and from basically being really messy while eating those bacteria. In other words, the story between the Streptomyces bacteria and the springtail insect is a story of really simple propagation through one thing eating the other thing and spreading its spores around. Now, obviously this doesn't really present a really exciting end to this mystery of Petrichor, the smell that we all know and love, but right now it's a start. We're getting somewhere in trying to understand why is it that humans smell this so well, and why is it that we like it? At least most of us do. But scientifically speaking, the most important question here is why is it that our noses are so extremely sensitive to this molecule? Like I mentioned before, we can smell it better than sharks smell blood, and here only a few molecules are needed per trillion molecules of air for us to be able to detect this smell from basically anywhere. Now this is absolutely insane when you think about it. It's literally thousands and even millions of times more potent than most of the other smells we can smell. So hopefully one day the scientists will be able to discover what's going on here and why we're so sensitive to it. But for now, we at least know where it's coming from and what's spreading it everywhere around the planet. And I guess somehow these insects and these bacteria somehow connect to our evolutionary history as well. Maybe one day we'll discover why is it that we can smell petrichor and lightning, which is ozone, so well, and why some other animals don't smell them at all. For now, it remains a mystery and something we're probably going to discuss in one of the future videos in the next few years. Until then, subscribe if you still haven't, share this with someone who loves learning about sciences, and come back tomorrow to learn something you may have not known before. Also, consider supporting this channel on Patreon because it does help me quite a lot. And alternatively, you can also support this channel by buying the Wonderful Person t-shirt that you can find in the description below. I'll see you tomorrow, space out, and as always, bye bye. And it's really funny because it's actually raining right now outside and I can smell it even with my windows closed. How insane is that?